Welcome to the House of Lincoln. That's a nice park over there. Very nice boulevard over there. See that?
Second, thank you. Great. Thank you. Do we there? Take right here, please. All right. Thank you so much, right? Thank you very much. Thank you. 2:30, excellent, right? Hang out right by these benches for just a second until we're all outside. Welcome everyone. Here we go. Lincoln's home is just down the block there. We're going to walk into our historic neighborhood now, so follow me, heading right this way. We are headed into our historic neighborhood. The Park Service actually has these 4 square blocks preserved, and all the houses that are still standing here on the historic street are not replicas. These are Lincoln's neighbors' houses and friends' houses as well, still standing here too. So there is a lot more history here in the neighborhood than just Lincoln's home. I encourage you all, if you have more time after the tour today, and you haven't yet done so, to just walk up and down the street a bit, get to know the feel of the neighborhood here as it was in 1860. But for now, we're headed straight ahead to the front of the Lincoln home. Right this way. Gather here in the street, wherever you'd like to be. We'll head inside, just a quick little intro out here before we go in. Great. Okay. Well, everyone, here we are now in front of the Lincoln home. Now, this is the original house, and it's standing where it has been since it was built here back in 1839. Now, Lincoln and his family moved in a few years after that. He actually bought this house in 1844, and he moved in with his wife Mary, and at that time their one son, Robert, who was less than a year old at the time. Lincoln purchased this house for a total of $1,500. But when he moved in, the house wouldn't have looked this extensive. That second floor was not there at all when Lincoln moved in. This was just a cottage, a single-story home with a little attic loft above it. Now, as Lincoln found more success in town as a lawyer and a politician, and as his family also continued to grow, 3 more sons are born in this house. Those boys need more room. So in 1856, the second story was put on top there, and the house is finished as we see it today. So just keep that in mind. The second floor is about 17 years newer than the first. You'll notice differences up there. Higher ceilings up on the second floor, bigger rooms, doors and door frames are different sizes and styles, reflecting Lincoln's growing status in the community as he worked up to national prominence on his way to the presidency. So that's a little intro to the history of the house itself. But I am pretty sure that you all got tour tickets today for the inside look, not to stand in the street. So we are gonna head inside now. As soon as we get in the front door, I just want everyone to hang a left and go into the parlor. That is a nice long room You'll fill that up to the back. We'll all get in there. I will follow behind you at the end there, and we'll have our first stop in the parlor room. So, any questions before we head inside? If not, then we're gonna go right on in. All right, into the house we go and into the parlor. Right this way, everyone. To about the middle of the room here, so I can see everyone and you can all see me. Pardon me for just a second here to slip right by. I'll park right here in the middle. Excellent. We're all in. Nobody left behind. Everybody can see? Yes, good? Okay. Well, here we are, folks. We are now standing inside the Lincoln home, and it is actually appropriate we welcome you all in this room first. Because if you had been guests of the Lincolns back in their day, they would have welcomed you to the home in this room as well. This is the formal parlor. Now that basically just means that this is the fancy room, right? This is where you have all the nicest furniture and pretty display pieces, the decorations, all that stuff that makes such a good impression on a guest. This is where the Lincolns would have hosted their parties and formal events, their social gatherings of all shapes and sizes. There would be giant parties here, there would be small little gatherings here. Mary would have tea and cakes with her friends. Lincoln would meet with friends and clients and lawyers here. All those social events here, no matter the size, filter through the parlor. Now, because this is such an important space for the guests of the home, that means that this was not really a room for any kind of family time. So, the Lincoln boys, those sons, would not really be found in here. In fact, if there was no party happening that day, then these doors that you came in would have just been closed and locked, the boys kept out. There's a reason for that. The boys are notorious troublemakers. They would love to get in here and wreck this place if they could. Quite wild. And Lincoln is famously lenient on his children, letting them get away with a lot. So good idea to not let them get up to the trouble in the first place, just keep the doors locked. So that seems to have worked out pretty well for the Lincolns, seeing as we do still have a lot of their furniture here, and it's in great condition. If you see all the dark wood furniture pieces in the parlor with the black upholstery, all of that is black horsehair upholstery on all these furniture pieces. And with only one exception, all the horsehair furniture here is original to the Lincoln family. This one rocking chair in the middle of the room is not theirs, but the other rockers, then the couches, and the chairs along the walls and under the windows are all original Lincoln pieces. Pretty neat. On that same subject, other original items here include the marble top table on the far wall under the big mirror there, very fancy. Then kind of moving along the back wall here in the middle behind me, you see this kind of shelf unit that's 5 levels tall with Lincoln's bust on top. That unit is original, and it is called a whatnot shelf. Yes, because you load it up with whatnots, trinkets, knickknacks, odds and ends, things like that. So that belonged to them. And then in the far back corner, over on this far side of the room, we actually have Lincoln's own bookcase. Very impressive. Even more impressive, the bookcase still has a few of Lincoln's own books inside it as well. So, lots of really neat stuff here in the parlor. But of course, the parlor isn't just important because it's so fancy and pretty. It's also where we can trace back some important historic events in Lincoln's life, right here. Now, I think the most significant event that occurs in the parlor happens in May of 1860. That was when Abraham Lincoln was greeted in this room by a delegation of men who have traveled from the Republican National Convention in Chicago down to Springfield to find him and tell Mr. Lincoln that he had been selected as the nominee for his party in the presidential election that year. This is where they said, Mr. Lincoln, we want you to run. We want you on the ticket. Now, will you do it? Yes or no? And does anyone know what Lincoln said to that question, or have a guess? Well, you'd be right to be hesitant, because he actually doesn't say yes like you would think he would, right? He actually doesn't say yes, and he doesn't exactly say no either. He comes up with a different option. Lincoln tells those men, let me think about it. He needed more time. It took him 3 extra days to think it over. Remember, though, that Civil War was looming. Lincoln knew that he was a controversial political figure and that his election could even be that final straw that set off a conflict. However, it might also be the only way to prevent the expansion of slavery to new states and territories. So, quite a dilemma for him. Takes Lincoln 3 days, but after those 3 days of hard thought, he does arrive at the decision we know he eventually made. That's when he said, yes, he did accept, and of course, from there, the rest is history. But we still say that Lincoln's formal road to the White House began in this very room, the parlor. This is where he officially learned he could be president. So, a turning point in American history right here in this very room. Pretty neat space for that reason. So that is the parlor room here in a nutshell. Now, before we move on to the rest of the house, not original or edible. Sorry. Right over there. Meet you in the room past there. Yeah, we may need to make 2 lines in this room if we can, just to make sure that everybody has a chance to get in here. Yeah, we can. Yep, there you go. Perfect. Great, great, great. Get everybody in. We have pretty much a full group today. We just don't want to leave anybody out. Great. And is that everyone?
No.
One more? Thought so. Great, there we go. All right, can we all see? We all good? Great. Well, this room we're finding ourselves in, this is kind of the opposite of the parlor in many ways. Remember that parlor room was off limits to the boys? It was just for the parties, the guests, the visitors. Well, this room now is just for the family. This is called the sitting room. We would call this a living room or a family room today. This is where the family can gather to relax, play games, enjoy each other's company, and they get some work done here as well. Mostly you would find Mary working in this room. Mary's special place is right over here on the far right-hand side of the room. Underneath that big mirror on the wall there is Mary's original sewing table. That's where she would be parked most evenings, working hard. She makes and mends all the clothes for the family there. All of her son's clothing are made by hand by Mary right there. So, a lot of hard work for her. Most evenings she'd be working there, at least trying her best to work hard while dealing with distractions, like the fact there would most often be a wrestling match going on the floor at the same time. Those Lincoln boys love wrestling. And actually, this time when I say the Lincoln boys, I include Abraham in that. He is one of the boys, and he will wrestle his kids on the floor. Lincoln actually has a long history as a wrestler. He is, in fact, the winner of over 300 wrestling matches in his life. Actually, Abe Lincoln is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame as well. That's true. Yes, really. So I'm sure that his boys are no match for him. We just have to hope, being a good father, he might have let them off easy, right? Maybe given them the free win every once in a while. Maybe. But if those boys didn't want to do so much physical activity there, they could enjoy more relaxed games and things as well. Over on the table to the left side of the room, you can see they would play board games like chess, or if they wanted to be more technologically advanced, then they could use that wooden box contraption. Looks like it has a pair of binoculars on it. Now that is an original piece as well. Lincoln actually purchased that item for about $25. Not cheap. That is actually about $900 today. What could be so expensive? Well, that is their entertainment center. It is a wonder of modern technology. It's called a stereoscope. Basically, if you see the cards that are scattered on the table in front of the box there, the cards each have over here.
Is the wallpaper more or less original, like same design?
Okay, so in most of the house, it's actually an educated guess because we just don't know what the original was. There's actually only one room where we know exactly what it was, and you picked the right room to ask that question because it is this room.
Interesting.
We're going to talk about it more in a little bit here. Do make sure we're staying on the blue carpet in this section as well in this room here. Thank you very much. Perfect. Okay. Anymore? Yeah. All right. So, yeah, make 2 lines if we need to. Just take a step in. We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be in this room as well. Thank you. And is that all of us? Great. So, at the top of our stairs, I hope we all did get a peek in the guest room across the hallway. Guest room is just what it sounds like, the room where you host your guests. Mary's room. That doesn't mean they slept separately. They do mostly share this bed together here. We call it Mary's room back there because all of Mary's stuff is there. That's where Mary keeps her clothes, her jewelry, her personal items. Even furniture pieces from her side of the family are all back there. Also in Mary's room are the 2 youngest boys, Willie and Tad. They slept back there on what was called a trundle bed. That's basically a pull-out bed from underneath the main one, like a big drawer with a mattress in it. They would have been back there. Now, if those boys were having a hard time getting to sleep or being rowdy or misbehaving, anything that required mom's attention, she could get up from here and walk right back there to take care of the sons. Nice benefit of the 2 rooms right next to each other. When they were downstairs, they would have all been crammed into a single bedroom. Do we remember the parlor, the first room we were in? It had that kind of archway in the middle with the folding doors. The parlor did actually used to be 2 different rooms. The back half of that parlor room was the 1 bedroom downstairs when it was a single-story house. So they would have all been crammed down there. And now that they have the 2nd story, they can spread out. So good for them. Now, when Mary was back there with the boys, Abraham would suddenly have this room all to himself. And when he had that opportunity, he would use this room to work. He uses it as a little office. Working from that desk in the far corner over there. I know it doesn't look like too much, but that desk is actually my favorite artifact in the house. That is Lincoln's original writing desk, where he composes letters and speeches and correspondences, law cases, all that. If anyone knows the House Divided speech, very famous speech, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We think that Lincoln actually wrote those famous words on that very desk. So it is an important piece of history here for sure. But his neighbors back then would say they saw candles in these corner windows flickering until 2 or 3 in the morning most nights, or not most nights, some nights at least, letting them know Abe was often a night owl working late, which meant Mary and the boys were getting a good night's sleep back there for sure. So that's nice. I do love that desk very much, but I do know the desk is not the most eye-catching part of this room. At least when I walk in here, my eyes always immediately go to what is all around us, right? What do we think of this wallpaper?
Busy.
You can be honest. Yeah, busy. Busy's one. Intense, maybe a little bit dizzying. I will say there's an elegance to it as well, especially up close. You might get a sense of those nice details and that lovely shade of blue. But yes, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But anyway, this is actually the only room in the house where we do know exactly what the original wallpaper was when the Lincolns were here. A scrap of that original paper did survive in this room, which we used to recreate the entire thing, and here it is. Pretty neat. It is a French pattern, which meant it was Mary's idea, almost certainly. Mary spoke French. She knew French culture. This would have been right up her alley for sure. Meant to be evocative of those European manners and castles. Very fancy, very elegant up here for sure. So, that's the bedroom here. Questions in this room at all? Yes?
Is this like to wash?
Exactly, yes. There's a wash station right here. There are no bathrooms in the house, so you do have to just kind of wash in your bedroom. We have the shaving mirror here, hung at Lincoln's height, and yes, he would wash himself up here and actually shave in the mornings. He doesn't have his famous beard until towards the end of 1860. For most of his life, he is completely clean shaven, so he takes care of all that right here as well. But yes, most of the bedrooms, you will notice a wash station in them. All right.
There's a chamber pot under there, but where did all of that go?
Okay, yeah, so there is a chamber pot under the bed. There is also an outhouse in the backyard. They dump it out in there. Yep. Speaking of which, we're going to head through Mary's room next. And one thing I do want you to notice as we walk through Mary's room, of course, Mary would be so thrilled that hundreds of people every day get to walk through her bedroom and admire her toilet. But we do have Mary's original commode on display. She gets a step up from the chamber pot. You will see Mary's fancy wooden box seat over there to the left as you walk in. Compare that with the chamber pot, and I think you will see that Mary does get the good stuff. That's something I want you to notice in Mary's room. One more thing to notice as you walk through Mary's room, you will see on the back wall of her room to the left of her bed, there is a large dresser with 4 big drawers in it. That dresser is actually the oldest artifact in the house. It is a Todd family heirloom brought here from Lexington, Kentucky. So that dresser predates this house. It is actually about 200 years old. So note those things in Mary's room as we move through it. We are going to head straight through that room and then fill up this back hallway. So come right on through. Take a look around Mary's room, then into the back hall. Well, here we are, everyone, in the wonderful, glamorous Lincoln kitchen. Maybe a bit more cramped than a modern kitchen, lacking some appliances, right? They have no fridge, no microwave, no toaster, no running water or electricity at all. Means cooking is a bit more difficult than we find it today, especially when you consider for most of the years they were here, the Lincolns would have just cooked over an open fire. Would have really been that simple. But by 1860, Abraham realized they could do a lot better, and he got a major upgrade for the family. We still see that upgrade here on the floor today. That big impressive piece is the original cast iron wood burning stove. Very impressive, multiple uses as well. It's got that stove top, there's an oven on the inside, and the part we call the apron, which is that shelf off the front. You can use that to heat up irons for your clothing. So it really is a multi-purpose tool. Mary and the hired girl use that stove every single day. Mary in particular actually really loves that stove. Mary loves the stove so much, she wants to take it with them to Washington when it's time to move. Abraham does have to convince her that the White House has a full kitchen already. They do not need our stove, which weighs about 600 pounds, so they did leave it here. I don't really blame him for that, but I understand completely why Mary loved it as well. It looks great, makes great food. Excuse me, back in the dining room over there, which we are now on the other side of, we saw ham, potatoes, and of course Mary's specialty, that would be white almond cake. She makes that for the family on their birthdays. They love that. So all these foods are made a lot easier and tastier with that stove. But now that you have seen that stove, there's only one more thing I want you to notice here before we leave today. It's not even really anything in the room as much as it is the size of the room itself. Between the 4 walls of just this kitchen, note how large that space is, or rather how small it actually is. That's important because, as it actually turns out, the kitchen here is the same size as the entire log cabin where Abe Lincoln was born, where he lived as a young boy with up to 8 other people at once in a house just the size of this room. I would say that is quite the humble beginning. And growing up there, Lincoln has less than a year of formal schooling in his whole life put together. He has to teach himself to read. When he grows up and leaves home, teaches himself law practice as well, becomes a lawyer on his own, moves here to Springfield to make a name for himself. Thankfully, he does get that law career off the ground in town here, but more than that, he finds a welcoming community and, of course, a family here in town as well. All of that lets him settle here for 24 years in total, almost half his life in Springfield, 17 of those years in this very house, growing it into the home we've seen today, until, of course, he moves on to the even more famous White House. Quite a journey in one lifetime. And of course, mostly we see Lincoln today as that mythic American icon, the giant face on Mount Rushmore, the $5 bills, all of that. But here, we want to bring him down a bit to that more human level, that you can see the actual man of Abraham Lincoln, who really did live in this very house for so long, calling this place and this whole community home. You can see that he was, of course, a hard worker here in the house. He was a devoted husband and father here, of course. And do not forget, he was those very important two big things to remember: wrestler and a cat lover. That is the Abraham Lincoln that we want you to leave here knowing today. If I've taught you those things, then I have done my job. And that will bring us to the end of the formal tour of Lincoln's home today. It has been a pleasure to bring you all through. On behalf of the National Park Service, let me say thank you so much for visiting our site today. At this point, we are going to head out this back door here to the yard. You can explore the whole rest of the site on your own pace at your own time. There's plenty more to see. The historic neighborhood's open to you. The backyard is open to you. The visitor center, of course. Just stay a while. Come back anytime, because tours are always going to be free here as well. But just have a great rest of your day in Lincoln's home. Thank you very, very much.
What happens after the family leaves?
Yeah, in the house here?
Yes.
So the house is rented out to other people when they went to Washington. They did still own it, but they rented it. And then that had happened as after Lincoln was assassinated as well. Robert, the oldest son, continued renting it out to other people until he gave it to the state of Illinois in 1887. And then it was a historic site since then.
Is that just a storage under there?
Yes, there's a root cellar down there for keeping things cool under the house. Yes.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem, thank you. Then there's the back porch over here as well. That little room beyond the back porch is the pantry if you're curious as well. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Abraham Lincoln's old neighborhood. You want to do it? Follow the instructions. I'm not sure.
Let's learn about the men and families. Okay. In 54, both Jenkins are living in this lot. Okay. No, it's here. The families are among a number of African Americans who lived in our neighborhood. Okay.
I think you need to point it at this thing. Point the camera at.
Whoa.
Just didn't come out that good. There's a augmented reality thing here. There used to be 2 houses here on this lot
I get this.
from Jameson Jenkins, African American activists, and you can use this AR app, the Jenkins Lot AR app. Point it at one of the sides of this cube, and it shows you what
Check it
would have
out.
otherwise been here.
Look, 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 the horse is coming.
So right here,
Look.
up ahead, they would have had their horses.
The horse carriage. And then that was in 1844. So then if I do 1854, oh no, the carriage is coming.
Oh my
at
god,
us.
we got run over by the horse.
Look, the carriage is there with stuff inside the back. Here you have your chickens. Great, there's a loose dog over there. Springfield's Lincoln.
Springfield. Just let's turn over here. Let's wait. Now that way.
Oh, it's over there.
All right, just in time for our 2:30 Lincoln home tour.